Welcome to the Geek to Geek podcast, where Beej is on the grind this week. I'm Void, and I'm here with my co-host Beej.
Getting that money, getting that XP, getting that money, getting that XP.
Today we were talking about JRPGs, just like we said we would do. You've been grinding a lot because you've been playing a lot of JRPGs. You have a giant list here. I don't know where to start, so I will let you pick where to start.
Oh man, I've got so many. Like it's weird because I've dealt with bipolar 2, and that's really where I think some of this list comes from, why it's so big, because I have I didn't even count them when I posted them on Twitter this morning, but I have 3 dozen RPGs or so on here that I've either bought or have access to in some way that I need to play. And so it's crazy that I'm doing that. So this is what a hypomanic state of mind looks like, where I go all out, trying to be as widespread on one thing as I can. So it started with Ni no Kuni 2. That game is fantastic, and I still haven't gone back to beat it because I'm still invested in Xenoblade Chronicles. I think I'm 48 hours into it at this point, and I'm nearing the final boss. I'm at maybe the boss that's right before the final boss, and it's fantastic. That I'm gonna have to give myself a break from the Xeno games after this because they're very long and very intense. But the Xenoblade series is fantastic. And I don't know why. I mean, I said last week I didn't know why I'd bounced off of Chronicles, and the further I get into it, I'm just like, man, I wish I'd finished this before. That it's great.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick up 2. I put it in my GameFly queue since I re-upped to that, but I don't know if it's gonna click with me the way it clicked with you. But I'm glad that you found it, because I've been talking to you a bunch, and I know how much it's been good to have something to just kind of throw your energy into. And those games are long, which kind of fits for what you need right now.
They are. And the weird thing is, and I think it's because of how I'm approaching them right now, is they're not as long as people told me they were. That I know that Jay spent 93-ish hours in Xenoblade 2, and it took me 66. And I've heard that the first one is just as big, and I'm probably going to beat it by 52-ish, and where it's not even as long for me, but I'm not doing a lot of the side quests. I realized that as I went through this one, that I don't necessarily like anything but the main story in these, that I'm not doing a lot of the side exploration and getting a lot of the extra stuff that's in the Xeno games, that I'm only there for the main story, where this isn't one that I'm exploring every nook and cranny, because there's not a whole lot of rewards or extra story in the side quests for it, that they're not terribly interesting. So I'm getting through them a little bit faster than a lot of people would, and I'll go into another one where I like side quests and things like that pretty soon, I'm sure.
So are you still thinking about jumping over to Xenogears or Xenosaga? What are the other ones? Those are the 2, right?
Well, Xenogears was the first one that came out on the PlayStation.
Yes,
and
I know that one.
And then Xenosaga was on the PS2, and there were 3 of those. And then there's one more Xenoblade game that was on the Wii U, that's Xenoblade Chronicles X. And I will eventually get through all of those, but I've started Xenogears again because I have it on the Vita, on the what's the virtual console, basically, where you play PS1 classic games, and I think I'm 10 hours into it, and it's still really, really good. That the battle system in it is just fantastic. And so I'll go back, but I just don't think I have one of these theologically inspired RPGs in me. I think I kind of want an everyday, ordinary JRPG about fantasy weird stuff and somebody trying to blow up the world or something like that, kind of like Ni no Kuni 2.
Oh, yeah, and you're just going to jump back to that, and then you said maybe even Ni no Kuni 1?
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to do Ni no Kuni 1 first, because I've read more about it, and I have it. I borrowed Austin's copy of it, and he has told me how it is way longer than the second one. He's just getting to where he's platinum trophying the second one on PS4 rather. He may do it tomorrow when he returns from a trip, and then he's got one thing left to do, and he'll platinum it, and I can't remember how many hours he said it took him, maybe 60, but he has way more hours than that in the first one, and he never even beat it. So just talking to him, I'm like, I'm probably gonna go into gonna finish Ni no Kuni after this, and then most likely I'm probably gonna dig into something like Star Ocean Integrity and Faithlessness. And I know you bounced off of that one really hard, but knowing what you bounced off of it, because you wanted a sci-fi game, right? That's the one where you wanted a sci-fi game, and it was more of a fantasy RPG, if I'm remembering right.
Yep, and I've heard that it gets to the sci-fi, but it takes like 10 or 20 hours, and I didn't have that in me. I bounced off of it pretty quick.
And I've read that it's only about 10 to 15 hours long, so I figure if I can do a shorter one like that, and I think the way it was put to me was that if you look at it kind of like a Star Trek Away mission, then you see how the sci-fi fits into it all. So I'm like, okay, I can do that one. But so I'm either going to do that. I hope it's, and then I joined GameStop, their pro thing, because I bought a new 2DS and a new 3DS recently for this. Like I tell you, I'm going all in, and I returned the new 2DS. I ordered GameStop, excuse me, had a thing where they have their like bundles of pre-owned consoles, and they had a new 3DS with Donkey Kong Country 3D and Kirby 3D for the same price that a new 2DS goes for. So I bought the new 2DS, but then I saw that bundle, so like, I got it at Walmart, I can just take it back. And so I ordered that, waited till it came in, and basically compared the two, and the new 3DS is hands down better than the new 2DS in pretty much every way. That it feels sturdier with both of them side by side. The new 2DS, I'd seen everybody say that you buy this if you're coming in late to the 3DS party and you have games you want to play, and you get this one because it's more affordable and it's better. And it's not. It feels cheap. That the extra $30-ish that it takes to buy a 3DS generally is worth it in every single way. The battery lasts longer. The screen is better. They have different shaped pixels on there. Did you know that?
Yeah, I mean, my kids have 2DSs and I have a 3DS, so we don't have either of the latest iterations of them. But yeah, I mean, 2DSs are made with kids in mind. Like, they're plasticky, and it's not that they're cheap, but it's that they have that cheaper feel, like almost like a toy and less of an electronic. And 3DSs are really like geared for adult gamers.
And that's the way that the new 2DS was. That it actually felt flimsy, like the top of it wobbled whenever I was playing it, and the screen on it had square pixels that you could see, whereas the 3DS has round pixels, which is strange. But the way they do the 3D, so the text on the 2DS was really jagged and hard to read, a lot of it. That it was just a really weird experience. And so I bought the new 3DS, and when I joined their pro thing, because it basically got me was the same price as what I was buying that day, I got a coupon for a buy two get one free, so I bought Dragon Quest 8 because my friend Bobby has been playing it on Twitter and posting pictures, and it made me want to play it. Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance, because I never even got the PlayStation 4 version of it, so I figured I could get this one and carry it with me. And then Shin Megami Tensei 4, which I'm really excited about. I'm not sure how I will like it, because I think Jay said that it was like the most hardcore of all the JRPG series, but it seems so much more interesting to me than the Persona series. So I'm going to try it first and then probably not dig in until I'm ready, but I want to see what it's like, because I've read a lot about it.
I've tried a couple of the Shin Megami Tensei games, and I couldn't get any purchase in them at all. Like, I just couldn't latch on. I tried. I think I'm just waiting for the next one at this point, because there's one in development for the Switch. So I'll probably try it again there. But I mean, I don't know. I like Persona so much, and so many of the cool things in Persona with like the social links and the story and just what they do in terms of like the tone of the game and the approachability of it. Like, all of that draws me in, and a lot of that is just missing from the mainline games.
And see, I don't care anything about the social stuff. That even the part of Persona 4 that I played, I didn't
and that's
care
my favorite part.
Not as much as that. And I like the not dungeon stuff, the demon stuff that they have, where you capture demons and kind of fight with them. I like the darker tone in the main series because I've always kept up with like that part of it, even when I was a teenager. And but I wanted to try some of the spin-offs, like there's one coming out. It may have come out today, actually, when we record this, the new Shin Megami Tensei, I can't remember the name of it, on the 3DS, but it's one of those weird first-person dungeon ones where you have to like map out the dungeon yourself.
I tried one of those.
And I'm oh man,
they're weird.
How did you like it?
I did not like it. I'm not a big fan of like the first person camera viewpoint for RPG, or well, for JRPGs. For Western RPGs, it's a totally different thing. But for JRPGs, I'm not a big fan of like that point of view. I don't know, something about it doesn't quite work for me or click with me, which is also maybe one of the reasons some of the earlier Dragon Quest stuff didn't work for me very well. But like I saw you have 8 on your list. I'm still excited about 11. I think I want to like Dragon Quest more than I do. And then Shin Megami Tensei might be the same thing. I kind of want to like it more than I've actually liked it, but I'm willing to give both of those series another shot when they come out with their next iteration.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I'm actually the same way on that because of, like, I hear you talk about Persona so much. Like, everybody loves Persona, and I really, really want to get into it. And one of the reasons I'm waiting on the Persona game specifically, well, there are 2 reasons, is I want, like, a portable version of Persona 5 like they did with Persona 4 Golden. I want one of that for 5 on the Switch or the Vita, whichever, because there is a PS3 version of 5. And on top of that, it's like 95 hours long. How Long to Beat has the story on just the main line all the way through for Persona 5 at like 95 hours. Was yours that long when you did it?
Yeah,
when you went through on that one?
You know that I read fast, and I usually get to a point where I kind of like crit path a game as much as I can. That it still took me 70 hours, my first playthrough. Okay. So I know people who have done over 100 easily. I know a couple people that have done like 150. That seems very excessive to me based on what I ran into. But yeah, I mean, I think around the like 90 hour to like 110 is pretty normal.
Yeah, and so that's one reason when I saw that, I actually took it out of my PlayStation cart during their recent Golden sale. That I was just like, I'm going to wait and not spend my money on it because I don't want one that is going to be pretty much guaranteed to be that long. Whereas I've been coming in under on the others. So I also want to like Dragon Quest. I'm the same way you are, that I got excited when I saw some videos of 11 and I looked at it and I was like, yeah, I'm interested in this. I don't know a whole lot about it, and then almost immediately I saw Bobby post a picture of Dragon Quest 8 on his 3DS, and it just looked so cool. And so I just want to try it, and I figure with getting cheap stuff like that, and since I got physical copies, I can toss them up on eBay and get most, if not all, of my money back whenever I do it. So, and do whatever else I want since I didn't just buy digital on them.
Well, and I see you have Ever Oasis and Radiant Historia on here too, which are also 3DS, 2DS games. So I'm assuming that was part of your decision.
Yeah, and I want to try those. I've read so much about them, and I think you and I don't remember if we were on air last week or not when we were talking about Radiant Historia, but it's where you go back and forth in time, and it sounded really, really neat to me, just the messing with the time streams in a fantasy world like that. And then Ever Oasis was described in a review that I read. Well, it's a Nintendo game that got put out by the guy who made Secret of Mana. So it's like Secret of Mana meets Harvest Moon. And I don't like Harvest Moon, but that combination seems like it could work really, really well together because of taking just the basics of each of those together. Really, really sounds cool to me. So I
tried the demo of that one, and it was a little too like chibi for me. You know what I mean?
Was it?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I mean, it's obvious that it is a chibi type of game, like is right when you get into it. But I don't know. I know a lot of people that enjoyed it, so maybe you will. I didn't, but it was one that like I didn't bounce off it because it was bad. It was just like the tone and the style. I was like, I'm not feeling this, I think is what happened.
Yeah, and that's why I've got the demos of those, because I'm like, the others I know I have way more of a chance of playing through just based on what I know about me and what I know about the games. And given how I'm kind of using these as a way just to completely escape a lot of things right now, it's like, okay, I don't know if I'll play these two. I don't want to spend the money, but I'm probably going to enjoy Dragon Quest VIII because I'm taking a lot of advice from people who also like the same kind of games I do now.
So I was going to ask you too. Like, I mean, I know you posted your like master list on Slack and on Twitter. You narrowed it down for our show notes today, which I appreciate. But you also like have a couple in there that are older. So you have like Legend of Dragoon. You have like 2 Wild Arms games. Isn't Wise like an older series too? I mean, I know it's also newer, but it goes a ways back.
Yeah, and well, Legend of Dragoon I wanted to play because you and Austin both told me about it. More him, but I know that you've played this one that we talked about.
Yeah, the more we talked about it, the more I realized I think I actually beat that game when I was a kid. And I think I'm the one who told you when you went to start it that I did not think it had aged well. And I'm assuming I was right.
You were absolutely right. Okay. Because I got it. I think it was on a PlayStation sale a long time ago, where I think it was $3. So with it being like Austin's favorite RPG when he was younger, and got him into JRPGs, it's like, yeah, I'll try this for $3. And I downloaded it, and I had it on my Vita all the way on the way down to Disney a couple of weeks ago, and I deleted it off of my PlayStation after like 2 battles, maybe off of my Vita, off of like 2 battles, because they're so slow. That PS1 games tended to take their time with the animations because they were really showing off that new 3D, and the timing mechanic was cool, that you had to tap a button at a certain time as your character attacked to be able to get extra bonuses and do combos and things. That's cool, but it was so slow, the rest of it, that I just bounced right off of it. But it was neat to look back and be like, oh, that was one of the first voice acted JRPGs that came out. So
yeah, that's like one of the only things I remember from it is that timing based mechanic where you actually have to like time your attacks. And then the other thing I vaguely remember is like transforming with something that like in my mind is equated to like Power Rangers, but I think you got wings and you became a dragoon, and that's where the name comes from.
Yeah, pretty much.
Very fuzzy in my mind, but I remember enough to think that it probably would not hold up to any kind of modern standards at all.
No, it doesn't. And the translation was apparently just god awful. And Austin was telling me about it. Like, he would send me messages of whenever something just came through where the localization just didn't work. And there was one character at one point, he said, it was like, yeah, and I want to read all of the books. But instead, it said something along the lines of, I'm going to eat all of these books. And it was just hilarious because he had transcribed out the entire conversation, and it just made the worst sense. And I don't even remember the rest of it. It was like, I'm going to eat all these books. That he's just this librarian saying this out of nowhere. It's just like those kinds of localization errors. So
wow, that's pretty intense.
It had one of the bad ones, one of those bad translations going through, and I don't know, I think it's East, but not Wise, but I've always say Wise.
No, you're right. I think I've heard people pronounce it that way, but it's just the letter Y. It's like a capital letter Y, and it always is followed by an S. So
and I didn't know. I'd always called it Wise. It was like I can't remember the old one, Wise Wanderers from Wise or something like that when I was a kid, and then it was the newest Nintendo Direct video when they pronounced it. They were like East, the Lacrimosa of Dana, something like that.
That series has weird names. That's
it's
one
pronounced
of those
East. Yeah, and it's weird. And looking at that one got me more interested in that series. So I did some looking, and I downloaded East Memories of Celceta. Which is like one of the best entry points to the series I had read. And they're basically Kingdom Hearts meets Zelda-ish kind of action RPGs thing, where they have a story and they all follow the same guy, where he wrote a journal of all of his adventures, and each of the games follows a different story basically that he had chronicled of him, except for I think East Origins. And it seems really neat, and people tended to love it. And the more I've looked into it, it's really hard. That they have, like, they're designed to be really fast-paced, frantic, hectic battles, and I got that from Memories of Celceta. I have no idea. Celceta, I don't know. CEE or CELCETA, I don't know. Like you said, they have weird names, but it was fun. But then, and I was gonna play through it on the way back from Disney, and then Austin let me borrow Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and we both know how that's turned out so far. And but it's really good. Like, but it's also really hard. The first boss beat me like 3 times before I was able to beat it, because there's kind of a rock paper scissors character swapping dynamic where every character you get you can swap on the fly, and they all have a different kind of attack that is good for a different kind of monster, but it happens so quickly that it's not really annoying. You notice it, you press a button on, you're still attacking basically mid-swing, where it's really cool and really fast-paced, but it's not Xenoblade, and it just, like I said, it just grabbed me. And,
so what about, I know I like put a bunch into my last question too, but I want to know about Wild Arms also, because that's one that's like, it's constantly held up as like a really good game or game series from that era, but it's honestly one that I've never touched. Like, I know of it, I know kind of what it is, but I've never played it.
I loved Wild Arms. When it came out, it was what kept me, and so this is going to be really weird, and everybody who's listening is going to be like, oh man, Wild Arms is what made me have a good summer when my parents split up over the summer when it came out. Like, it was brand new. My mom and I moved out, and we were living in town away from my dad, and it was over summer break, so I was sad, and I played Wild Arms with my friend Luke to be able to, like, we were both like super excited for Final Fantasy VII, and it hadn't come out yet. It wasn't coming out until September, and we have Wild Arms, and it was supposed to be this 3D battle, Legend of Zelda, kind of like in the world puzzles game. And so, kind of like right now when there's some weird stuff going on in my personal life, it was an RPG that kept me focused. So I've got this kind of emotional nostalgia on it, but also it's just really good because other people like felt this too, and the series has continued on and got this cult status where it's a fantasy world, but it's based around Old West stuff, where all of the technology and things like that are almost steampunky Western, where it'll be like desert cowboy-ish kind of outlaw stuff combined with high fantasy, which is really neat. And I like that kind of stuff, kind of like Dark Tower level of combination, kind of anachronism, where there's this high fantasy and this old civilization generally that left technology here, and there are arms that where it comes from is basically guns and weaponry that were left over from this old civilization. And the world map is, in the first one, is an overhead view like Zelda, and there are Zelda puzzles in it, and the battles are in 3D. And the second one is, and they're not related to each other than all taking place on the same world, but it may even be a different version of the world. And but the second one's really cool, and I got a few hours into it on the way down there, and just playing around, seeing what I wanted to play, and realized that the Wild Arms 2 is a PlayStation 1 game that straight up holds up, that it was fun to play in the battles. I was able to turn the Vita like fast loading on, and it didn't seem like it had PlayStation load times. It kind of had an isometric 3D view with sprite-based characters, and it didn't look bad at all on the Vita. It was just, this PlayStation game where it wasn't HD like Octopath Traveler, but it was that, but with jagged edges, basically. And I liked it. Like, the battles were fun. I was like, oh yeah, this is why I liked that game. Where even now, I'd never played that one, but I'm going to go back and finish this one eventually, because I thought I was going to play it, and then I discovered Ys and did all sorts of other things, and then Xenoblade came along again.
Yeah, I know. You just keep adding to your list, which, I mean, we should probably talk about. You added Tales of on here, because you and I have been talking about that, and I think I'm the fault here, because I told you that I was going to pick up Tales of Berseria because it's one of the newer ones, and it's supposed to be a really good, like, I don't know, what I heard about this story was interesting, but it's also supposed to be more standalone than a lot of the other ones are. But also, all of these take place in the same world, but like over not radically different times, but in like different areas of the world or different countries.
Yeah,
like I'm not 100% sure on how they tie together, but they all do tie together more so than like a Final Fantasy series.
Yeah, and at the same time, they're not completely standalone, but you can start with any of them and not feel like you've missed out on anything. And I didn't realize until you were talking about Berseria that I'd looked it up, and I know I texted you, was like, whoa, dude, did you know this? Where it was... I didn't know they were a series. Like, I know that sounds dumb, but I didn't know that the Tales of series was a series. I thought there was just these games that they were named that Tales of so and so because that's all that they had in common in my mind was like, these, Tales of this. It's so generic in terms of titles that you look for games in the store and you look at fantasy games. They're like, oh, Tales of Berseria, Tales of Zestiria, Tales of the Abyss. And it's like, how do I know those are connected? And it turns out they are. And when you were talking about Berseria, I started looking, and it turns out that I'd played these before, and I didn't know it.
Really? Wow.
I didn't have any clue that I'd play these, so I started looking, and when I realized that they were a series, I played the Japanese translated emulator ROM of Tales of Fantasia back in the day. I played Tales of Destiny on the PlayStation. I played Tales of Symphonia on the GameCube, and it's just like, how did I not know that? I played them and I didn't know they were a series, man. And it's like, and then you said that. So Humble Bundle just is in the middle of their spring sale right now. And they have Tales of Symphonia, which is held up as the best one. And I never beat it on GameCube. I think it may have been a rental or a friend had it when I was in college. And they had it for $4.49. So I'm like, yeah, I'm picking up Symphonia for that. And I also noticed that that they have Zestiria and Berseria for $12 and $15, I think, but they're on PC on this one. So I know that you were like, I'm going to play it on PlayStation, but I didn't pick any of those up. But I did pick up Tales of Symphonia to go back into and play again, as well as on the 3DS. Apparently, the best one is on 3DS, and it's Tales of the Abyss. That every ranking thing that I saw had Tales of the Abyss in the top 2. That was looking at them, I was like, awesome, I'll check that out. And there's a Vita one called Tales of Hearts too. Tales of Hearts R maybe, but there's apparently a lot of these that are very high quality that I know I like the series that I'd played and had no idea that they were the series.
Cool. I didn't know you had played them. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah. Okay, well, before we jump off the main topic, I have to ask, since we're talking JRPGs, are you interested in the 4-Job Fiesta at all this year?
No, and I was going to tell you... Okay, and I was going to tell you
what
why.
It is first, in case... If you weren't here last year or the year before, I've done this, I think this is my third year, maybe fourth doing it. I want to say third year. It's where you play through Final Fantasy V, and you do it as a group. It happens in the month of June, and you can register via Twitter. You can go to, I think it's just 4jobfiesta.com, but if you search or Google 4Job Fiesta, it'll be the top result because there's nothing else for it. But yeah, I mean, basically, you get assigned one class at every job crystal, and Final Fantasy V has like one of the deepest job systems in the entire Final Fantasy series, and you get assigned one job at each crystal in the game, and that is the only job that you are allowed to use for one of your characters from that point forward. So in this giant game with all of these different jobs that all interlink and have interesting things you can play around with, you end up only being able to use 4. And the cool thing is the game is diverse enough and like resilient enough that you can legitimately beat this game with any 4 options that it gives you, which is just incredible. The challenge is that you don't get to control what 4 you get, so it's different every year. So that's kind of the setup. Now tell me why you're not going to do it.
Okay, so this gets into my Geekery. So this is what I was actually going to talk about in my Geekery. But so because of all this, I'd finished up my Brandon Sanderson binge, and I finished Oathbringer, and everything was good. I didn't have anything to read. I finished the newest comic volume of Saga, and I was just out of things that I really wanted to lay in bed and read. And I realized that I'd never actually finished the boss fights book on Final Fantasy V.
Yeah. That's a great book.
you and I were sent, the author sent it to us to talk about on the podcast. So here we go.
Yeah,
I'm talking
Chris
about
Kohler.
it again. It's great. Like, this is a awesome book about the making and a fan's perspective on Final Fantasy V. And it got me going right back into being a teenager again, because once again, I was one of those teenagers playing the fan-translated Final Fantasy V ROM because I couldn't get my parents to help me import the Japanese one and mess up my Super Nintendo. So I'm reading this book, and it's talking about how wonderful the job system is, right? And I'm thinking back to me playing Final Fantasy V recently, last year on iOS, before I got my Android phone, and getting to, I think, the third world, and then not bouncing off, but I got a new phone and didn't have access to it anymore, and so I didn't play it. And I realized it was talking about the 4-job fiesta in the book. It was talking about the guy who created it and how it does so many wonderful things for charity. And so it's really cool. And I realized reading this book that I don't like job systems. That for me, all the games that I'm loving right now are games where I'm playing them with the character classes as they come. That I'm not moving like my blades in Xenoblade 2 onto different characters. It's like, oh, if it comes with a tank blade, he's going to be a tank, or she's going to be a tank actually, and it's like, these are what I'm playing. And I realize that's why, as much as I love Final Fantasy V, I'm not going after Bravely Default, because it's one of your, like you've told me, it's one of the best RPGs on 3DS, that it's like a Final Fantasy game that's the best Final Fantasy game that's not a Final Fantasy game, basically.
It is. It's basically a direct follow-up to Final Fantasy V with like years and years and lots of experience in between. But like, if you like job systems and if you like Final Fantasy V, you owe it to yourself to play Bravely Default. And so,
yeah, and knowing that, I'm not picking it up or the second one. The same thing happened with Wild Arms XF. It's not a JRPG, it's a strategy RPG. It's the Final Fantasy Tactics of the Wild Arms series, except instead of a grid, it's on a hex board. And they told you at the beginning of the game, it's like maybe 3 or 4 battles in, that all of the classes that you can be you're basically that they all have different abilities that interact with the terrain and the boards, and that you have to change your classes at the beginning of every battle so that you can take advantage of it. And that's part of the strategy of the game, not just the maneuvering and putting together the right party, but actually changing your party around every battle. And I realized I hated it, that the games that make me change around my classes are games that I give up on, because as much as I like these games, I'm not nearly as much of a systems guy as you are. I don't understand how you're playing Final Fantasy V that many times through, because I want to experience a new story. I'm there for the characters. And in the job system games, they don't, and Chris Kohler said this in the book that really solidified it for me, that these characters, because you're bouncing around different jobs, they don't necessarily have as much of a personality as they're given, because a lot of times the characters' classes kind of put in to their personalities in JRPGs. And I think that's why I don't get into games with job systems as much, and why I don't enjoy them. And also because I feel like I have to get the very best all the time, and so I don't have fun with what I'm playing. I just feel like I need to level it up to get the next better ability, because I can, rather than just playing where I'm at with the game, where it's like, oh yeah, when I get a new white mage spell, that's fine, but it's like, oh, I have to get white 5. And
so I see where you're coming from, and I like both jobless and job systems for different reasons. But one of the reasons that I like Final Fantasy V 4-job Fiesta is that it's so much more focused, and it gives your characters it doesn't give them a personality, but it gives them a class, and you can't change it. So
that is true.
A lot of your problems with job systems would actually be eliminated by playing in the 4-job Fiesta, because you have no choice. There's nothing to work towards. It's just you are assigned a class, and then you put it on one character, and you can't change it, really.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. I hadn't thought about it that way, where that would be something.
So we were talking about it. I'm in a Slack. Well, I'm in a bunch of different Slacks, but one that I'm in, a bunch of us do the 4-job Fiesta, and we were talking about how your 4-job Fiesta runs are actually way faster than a normal Final Fantasy V run, because somebody in there who was interested in it was in the middle of their first Final Fantasy V playthrough right now, and they were like, well, how long is it going to take to get to the end of the game? And I threw out a number, and one of the other people in the Slack who knows Final Fantasy V like the back of his hand, he's like, no, that's a 4-job Fiesta time. You got to double it to play the game normally. And I was like, oh, I forgot how much more focused and how much more, like, how much less time you spend in battles and like grinding out levels and job levels and all that stuff, because you only have one job per character.
Yeah, so you're not having to go through and get 5 or 6 different jobs between crystals and get new abilities to swap in and out, so you don't have that extra grind. That's yeah, I could totally see it not taking nearly as long like that.
Yeah, so I think this year, I haven't ever had to pay. You don't have to pay, but if you get a class you don't like, you can pay to switch into a different class. That's part of the like donation fundraiser that goes on.
That's still random, right? You don't pick that one.
No,
it's still
you can
given
pick.
to you.
So you can buy your way into whatever class you want. So this year, just because like it's my 3rd or 4th year doing it, and I've never done a run with a knight, and I've always wanted to like get that as my first draw. So I think I might pay my way into making my first class a knight this year, just so I can donate a little, and just because I want to try it out. So we'll see how that goes.
I was really hoping this year that you get a berserker. That I'm crossing my fingers that one of your characters is a berserker.
Well, I've never signed up for Berserker Risk. So that's one of those things too, where people can put money in ahead of time, like after the registration starts, but before the Fiesta actually kicks off. And for every, I want to say it's like every $10 or every some amount of money, one more Berserker gets added to the pool. And then when you register, you can say whether or not you want a Berserker Risk, and then it will distribute it only to the people who say that they're willing to have it. So some years, if a lot of people pay in for the donations to get the amount of Berserkers, and then a little amount of people sign up for Berserker Risk, you can get parties that are literally all Berserker, all 4.
Which which he actually discusses in that book, which was interesting, where it was talking about ways that can still beat the game. That you cannot control your characters, but it's possible to still beat the game.
Yep, any combo can beat the game, which is one of the reasons that it's so fascinating. And I like doing it because the whole community that's into it plays it at the same time, so you have people to talk to about it. So it's not just about my run, it's about the runs of everybody around me and what classes they end up with, and just like talking through the strategy and the thinking behind the systems of like, how am I going to get past this one boss when I'm stuck with these guys? You know, like that's a big part of the fun for me.
And I know last year you found out that you could break staffs, like the staff weapons that to cast spells when you were having a hard time beating things.
Yes, that helped me a lot. That was really good.
Where it's just, and that was one of the things the book was talking about with this stuff, like learning these systems, that they're very intricate and very detailed, that keeps it having this kind of replayability. That is actually the reason I'm not playing this 4-job Fiesta. That I'm like, I want stories. So
I like stories too. Those. It's just, I don't know. I've enjoyed it the last couple times, and it's kind of nice to know like, here's a game I can come back to, spend 25 hours on, and like re-engage with it for a little bit, and then set it down again for another year. And it's in a structured way that appeals to me. Like, start on this day, play with other people. Like, here's my group that likes to do it. All of those things contribute to why I like it. But I'm sure I'll bring it up again once we're closer, and I'll make sure that people know where or when to register if you're interested.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. That's probably it for the main topic. Geeky offer of the week, really quick. You can go to gameflyoffer.com/geek and get a free 1-month trial on us, get a free Gamefly rental, whatever you want. I'm in the middle of it. I just resubscribed. I'm getting 2 at a time though, because that's the kind of person I am. And yeah, do that. It helps the podcast, and you get a free trial, which is always good. The network this week, Geektitude, I think they took a week off, but next week they're talking Deadpool 2. Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea, they talked about their favorite movies of all time. I just listened to that episode this morning, and then I'm halfway into this week's episode of The Comic Box. It's episode 99 out of 100, and Fletch took over basically, and Rob was the co-host. So it's been really interesting to listen to. I'm going to finish it probably right after I edit tonight. Episode 100 is right around the corner. You got to get your questions in like now if you have any more questions for Rob, because it's almost time. He's almost going to close the Comic Box, guys. Besides that, Weekly Geekery, you kind of covered your main thing. Do you want to talk about your other little thing, and then I'll fly through a bunch of mine?
Yeah, I got a new chair, and I didn't think about it. I've had it for a while, and I'd been wanting one of those kind of gamer chairs, like those DX Racer gamer chairs with black and bluish or green highlights and everything. And I'd wanted one for a while, but I didn't want to pay for it. And my back started hurting now that I'm working from home and in a chair all day. I realized that the office chair that I was in used to belong to my dad, and it was 20 years old. That actually was 19 years old, excuse me. That my dad got it when we moved into a new house when I was 16, and that was 19 years ago. So it had gone through my dad and me, and that was just what I had that I've been using this entire time. So it was time for me to get a new chair, and so I decided to buy one. And I looked and did the research, and I didn't want to buy one of like $300 to $500 gaming chairs or anything. So I looked at the reviews. I saw, read the 1 stars, the 5 stars, the middling ones, and I found one with a footrest and the one that reclines. Like, I am reclined out right now as we're recording this, with my seat back, my arms above my head, and my feet out on the reclining footrest. Like, it's awesome. Like, for a gaming chair, an office chair, it has made me so much more comfortable just working and playing. And also, apparently you like it, because I did not realize that I squeaked during the podcast that you had to edit out, that my chair was very noisy.
Yeah, well, it wasn't horrible, but that's when I noticed. I was like, one week I was like, did you get a new chair? Because there were no squeaks in your last audio track. And you were like, what are you talking about? So that was fun.
Yeah, and it was something that I just tuned out. I mean, obviously I'd had it for 19 years, so I didn't think about the sound anymore. I was just used to, it was just one of those ordinary sounds. So for me, when you said no more squeaks, I'm like, yeah, I did get it. Oh, huh.
Yeah. Cool. Well, this week I had a bunch of stuff, but I think I can fly through the first set of it here. I played a little bit of Fortnite because they had the Thanos crossover, which, did you see that?
I did. Like, that one was cool. I'll give them that. I was impressed by that crossover. I know some people are like, oh my God, crossovers. I'm like, no, that's the kind of thing that would keep me interested in the game.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool, and like I said, the rapid pace of iteration in Fortnite is a huge part of why I'm impressed by it. With that said, I think I'm kind of like, it's on the back burner now, because Season 3, I don't know if I ever said on air, but like, I went all the way up to tier 100. Like, I did everything to unlock everything that I could in Season 3, and then I took a couple weeks off, and then Season 4 started, and I booted up the game, and it was just like, seeing myself back at level 1 and tier 1, I just didn't want to do like there's so much ahead of me that if I started, I would know that I would feel like I need to play a lot so I could get like my money's worth out of the battle pass, and I just wasn't feeling it yet. So I think it's one that I'm going to put down and come back to at later some point. I don't know when, but like, if they're going to do a new season every 6 to 10 weeks, that's fine. Like, I can always jump in at the start of a new season later.
And that's completely understandable. I feel that way at the beginning of new Overwatch seasons, where my ranking is terrible, like always terrible. I am not good. And it's something that even at the beginning of a new season, where I'm like, I have to go through these placement matches again, and I got to deal with this, where I don't even have a high rank. It's just that idea of starting over after already being established in it.
Yeah. Well, I did play another Battle Royale game this week, and it was called Maelstrom, which I always want to say that Maelstrom, but it's not.
Nope.
It was like a Battle Royale early access sailing game where, well, you know that I like sailing combat, right? And like broadside and like ram people, and I always like that. I'm a fan of it. And like this game, like getting broadsides and ramming people felt great. It felt almost a little bit toyish, but in a fun way. Like, they would really bounce off each other and like hit each other with more force than would ever be possible. It was going for like the stylish side of things, not the realistic side of things. And like, there were a lot of cool things in it. So a bunch of ships all join. There's like small looting of NPC ships. So like right when the battle starts, it's not just open sea. There's like rocks, and there's, areas to sail between. So you have to be good at sailing and not get stuck. And then also there's like all these NPC ships that you can take out, and every ship you destroy drops at least one power up. So it could be like speed or armor or firepower or whatever. And then it drops a bunch of gold. And the gold that you pick up is actually persistent from round to round. So over time you can upgrade your ship, and I really liked that persistent aspect, especially right after feeling like I lost all progress in Fortnite, to go into a game like this, it's a multiplayer game, and feel like this gold that I was carrying over round to round, I could use to like upgrade my ship and unlock new abilities. And you can get captains, like different captains, different crew, different abilities, stuff like that. You know, that sense of ownership of all of that was very unlike Fortnite Battle Royale, but it was one of the reasons that I liked it a lot.
Okay.
That being said, it was still very early access. And the way that manifests is that, like, matchmaking, I'm so spoiled on Battle Royale matchmaking because Fortnite, you click the button and you're in a game in like 5 seconds, and then it gets 100 people in that game in like another 10 seconds, and then you're playing. It's like no time at all. It's not even enough time to like get up and use the bathroom or like grab a cup of water between when you hit go and when you're like actually in the game. And this game, it's not 100 people. It was only like 13 people in an arena, and I would join and it would just be like waiting. And then maybe someone else would join and then it waits for a while. I don't think I ever got into a game with a full 13 people because it was early access. I think the most I ever had was like 7.
Oh man.
I ended up, I played like almost 2 hours of this game when I had set it down for the night, or I played for 2 nights in a row. And then I looked at my time and I realized that like the matchmaking part was bugging me, and I was just under 2 hours. So I Steam returned it. But if this game comes out of early access and it actually has a community behind it, I will buy it again, like no questions asked.
Which that makes sense. I mean, that's the kind of thing, honestly, and I'm torn on you doing that because I'm a Steam returner. I mean, I do it constantly. But with early access, those are the kind of things that, yes, you use Steam refunds for early access games like that, but also for the developer, that kind of is like, oh man, why did we lose that without any kind of feedback, you know?
Yeah, but I don't know. It didn't make sense to hold on to it. So like,
I would have returned it too.
Yeah. I also tried BattleTech and returned it this week because it was so slow. Like I could not do it. The turns and animations are way too slow for me. My brother gave me a bunch of tips because he's been playing about like options you can turn off to make it faster, and it was still just like, I don't know, the animations and the time between turns and like how long each level takes, and like everything about that game is slow. It's in a way it's bogged down by the fact that they were so authentic to the tabletop experience. There's just like so many little bits and pieces, but then also a lot of the decisions they made with like animations just didn't work for me. So I tried it and I didn't like it. I wanted to like it, and I think when we talked about anticipated games of the year, this was one that was like an honorable mention for me. Like it's just not for me at all. So I returned that one. I still really like hearing about it. So if you're playing it, don't hesitate to like throw things my way, because I honestly love hearing discussions about this game, which is why I ended up buying it, but it's just not for me.
Now, with the animations on that one, are they slow and kind of ploddingly paced, or are they deliberate? Because I mean, but in the end, it's the same. But did they do it on purpose, or is it bad game design?
Both. I think it's both. Yeah. I guess the other games that I did this week, so Gamefly I got, and again, I'm doing my normal Gamefly thing where I put a bunch of things in my queue and then I organize them opposite of the order that I think I'm going to enjoy them. So I put the things that I think I'm going to bounce off of right up at the top, and then I put the things I'm most interested in at the bottom so that I can just rapidly iterate through games. You know how I do this, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I love it. Shadow of the Colossus remaster, and it's pretty. It's a very pretty game compared to what I had in my memory. The controls feel better than the last time I tried to go back to it, but they don't feel good. Like the climbing mechanics just feel dated and not modern at all. So I beat 3 Colossus really quick one night, and then I returned it. But that was enough. I got my taste. I got the pretty visuals, and I was like, oh yeah, I like this game for these reasons. I don't actually need to beat it again. I'm fine. And then I also grabbed Dragon Ball Fighter Z, or Fighters. I don't know how it's pronounced. It might be the prettiest fighting game that I've ever seen. Like,
watch videos of it. It is pretty.
It is. It's super, super pretty. I did all the training. I did some of the story. It's a fighting game. So I was done after like a day. Like that's all that it takes for me. I don't get into fighting games outside of Smash Brothers, but it's questionable if Smash Brothers is really a fighting game or not. So that went back, but I'm glad that I got some hands-on time with it. Now when I see the GIFs of it and, like the occasional stream or whatever, I have a better idea about what's going on, which is pretty cool.
And I love Dragon Ball Z. That was one where growing up, like everybody else in the late 90s where I was, that was my jam, coming home from high school and watching Dragon Ball Z. Like, I love it, but seeing those fighting games, I've never wanted to pick one up. You know, they look really cool. I've watched videos of them, but they've never appealed to me to want to actually play. And hearing you say that it's just a fighting game kind of solidifies that for me, because I'm the same as you. You give me a demo of a fighting game and I'll play it for a while, maybe a day. And I'd be the same as you. I'd return that one very quickly.
Yeah, but that's what I thought. Like I said, I do opposite order of interest for Gamefly, and it works out really well for me. I read a book this week. I read it in, I think, a day. Yeah, I read it in a day this weekend. I don't know how I managed to, just between doing stuff for my kids. I think it's literally the only other thing I did that day. But have you ever read Forever War?
Is it Joe Haldeman?
It's Joe book, something, yes.
Yeah, it's good. It is so good that yes, I've read it. It is awesome.
Okay, I had never read it, and somebody told me that it's in the vein of like Old Man's War and Starship Troopers.
Yeah, that surprises me. I thought you had read it.
No, and those are two books that I actually return to fairly often, which I don't do that with things for the most part. So knowing that, I went into Forever War, and it was really good. I didn't know that there was a sequel also, so I'm probably going to pick that up soon. Yeah, there's a standalone novella that's kind of like similar but separate in a way, but there's an actual second book in the series too. So
I did not know that.
Yeah, I might go grab that one and see what that's about, because I really, really like this book. I mean, I read it in a day, so that says a lot about it. But if you
I'd listen to the audiobook, so that'll be really good for me with the sequel too, because I like the audiobook a lot. The acting was great.
Yeah. Oh, good call. You can always go and get a free audiobook too.
audibletrial.com/geek.
I think it's /geek to geekcast, but close enough.
/geek to geekcast. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So anyway, I've really liked Forever War, and I can't remember what the next one's called, but I'll probably add that to my reading list. The one game that I played the most this week is Frostpunk. Have you heard about Frostpunk at all?
I've heard about it. I've seen bits and pieces of it, and I looked into it whenever I got a small discount on Green Man Gaming, I think, and not my kind of game at all. I looked at it, I was like, hard pass.
Yes. So I was going to say, well, I know it's not for you, especially not right now, but like, if you are out there and like you're not in a good mood, or you like at all sad or depressed, do not play this game. Like, under any circumstances, you have to be in the right headspace to deal with this game, because it is a winter apocalypse survival RTS. And I did not know if that would appeal to me, but oh man, it appealed to me so much. I was so surprised, because like I've bounced off of so many RTS games that I've tried in the last few years, and this is just about survival. And I've bounced off of so many survival games too.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that matching them up.
They're one of your games where it's like, I love the idea of this, and then you play, it's like, nope, it's a survival game.
So this is one that like does it for me. And
awesome.
It was so good. And one of the things that I think was key was that it's an apocalypse that's just weather. It's not aliens, it's not zombies, it's not nuclear war or monsters. It's literally just the environment. It's just cold. And something about that like cold and that like deep winter that just like resonated with my Minnesotan heart, you know? Like, I know what it feels like to be super cold. And that is what you're fighting in this game. You are fighting the cold. It's like, they don't know why, and it's basically set in, they kind of take it in a little bit of a steampunky direction, but it's more of like an alternate history, like Industrial Revolution, where it just started snowing and then it never stopped, and then it started getting colder and colder and colder. That's the setup for the game. And it is a game of, I mean, it's an RTS, it's a base builder. You're trying to build your base to survive and manage resources and stuff, but the game is about hard choices. And that's why it was so compelling to me, because like, choices really matter. You know, you get this big generator that goes into the middle of your base and you build out from it. So you build out in circles, which is interesting too. It's not a typical like grid-based system. It's like a circle-based building system. And the whole point of the game is to like keep your coal burning generator going, because that is the heater. That's what runs everything. That's what distributes the heat throughout your whole city. And you have to like get your coal industry up and running so that you can supply it. And then as things get colder, you have to like increase the level of power you're putting into it. And then as your like civilization, well, not civilization, your city gets bigger, you also have to expand the radius that it like pushes heat out to, and all of those burn more coal. So you get into this like loop of, okay, I have to use more coal, but I also have to harvest more coal. And that's just one resource. You have to manage a bunch of other ones too. There's things like passing laws, right? So like one of the first things
I'm looking at these
like,
bullet points and I'm like, man.
I know. And this is why I didn't know if it would be for me, right? Like one of the first things that you run into with the first scenario is like, what do you think about child labor? Are you okay with it? If you are, you could pass this law. If not, you're going to have a bunch of idle hands sitting there not helping you survive. Do you want that? And it's like, no, I'm signing those children into labor. Like, let's do it. And like, I mean, yeah, but then you also get into, okay, well, you signed this child labor law. Like, they have to work now. But are you going to let them do any job, or are you only going to like let them do safe jobs, like quote unquote safe jobs? And I'm like, I can't be super harsh. I'm going to let them only do safe jobs, right? And a lot of the things are like that. Like when sometimes you have to force people to do like a 24-hour emergency shift. And they'll like get depressed or they'll get hurt because they're overworked and overtired. One of the things in it is you can go down this one path on the medical. Well, it's like a law. You can say that you will either, it's basically like you can do amputations and like let people survive but be amputated and not be able to work, or you can do this other kind of like radical medicine that they will survive but they will never get better ever. So
oh man,
and it's like if you do that and then you keep going down the tree, eventually you can get to the point where you're like, oh, we can make prosthetics and then get these people back in the workforce, which is cool. But for a while, you're going to have this drain on your civilization where these people aren't going to be able to help you at all. And you need those resources for other things. So this is what the game is like, right? I told when I finished the first scenario, I lost the first time. And then I stepped away for a couple hours, and then I just came back and I played through the entire first scenario again, start to finish, and I beat it that time. And when I finished, I was just like emotionally drained, but so invested, and I felt like I had this incredibly intense experience that I just lived through, and it was a story that told itself through gameplay. Like I lost myself to it for like 6 hours one night, and there's something about that like storytelling through the gameplay elements that just resonated with me so much. And I finished it and I just sat down on the couch. My wife was like, what? And I told her basically the story of every decision I made and like my civilization and what I did to survive and like these laws I passed. And it got to a point where like things were getting like way too disorderly. So then you either have to go down like this path of order or this path of religion. And it's like which one of those you choose will really influence a lot of the things that happen later. And like, are you going to install yourself as like a despot? Like, are you going to just make yourself an unquestioning authoritarian leader? Yeah, like these questions are hard to deal with, but that is the kind of thing that I love to wrestle with in my head and is probably one of the best video game experiences I've had of the year. I don't want to say it's the best because it's super fresh and I have that immediacy to it that I'm like, oh, it's so good. I want to sit and think about it. But this game was kind of amazing to me. I don't know what else to tell you. There's a lot I can tell you. I could tell you the entire story of my first scenario and my second scenario because I remember every hard choice that I had to make, but I don't want to spoil it for people. And it's oppressive. It's stressful. Like you feel and you hear the cold and like you feel it in your bones. And I'm like, oh, I know what this feels like. But I really, really, really liked it. So, yeah.
That's one of those games where, I mean, it's not a game for me, but I appreciate after hearing about it that I appreciate the developers and the players. Like, I understand why people would like it. I can appreciate that. Like, I know I would not have fun playing this. Kind of like that. This War of Mine, I think, is a fantastic game that I will never play.
Yeah. And, you know, sometimes I've found more and more lately that, like, the AAA games are really cool in their own way, but every once in a while I'll run into something for like a smaller dev or like an indie dev, and that will be my game of the year. And not that I'm saying this is my game of the year, but those will just like surprise me and come out of nowhere. Like I hadn't really been paying attention to this game. I heard about it on a couple podcasts and I read about it a little bit and I still wasn't sure. And like I didn't know how much this would work for me until I was a couple hours into it, and I just got so invested in it.
I think that's fantastic because I'm in that way a lot with games as well, where I look at the AAA games coming out and I'm like, I don't care about these big blockbuster games, but this indie one seems really neat, or this small studio put out a really cool game that I'm going to see. Oh, this French studio put out this game. It's like, oh, I want to see what this one is. Those are the ones that are interesting me that I want to come back to, as opposed to, I call the next Call of Duty or something like that.
Yeah, and so I've played through 2 of the 3 scenarios that are in the game right now. I've beaten 2 of the 3 scenarios. I've played more than that and lost, which is fine. Like, that's part of the game. But I'm going to go back. I'm going to play the 3rd one. I don't know when, because I need a break between each one, because it honestly is intense to play. And then I think there's a 4th one sitting there that they're like, coming soon. So I'll probably play that too. But yeah, okay. I just want more time with this game, and I want more time to think about my experience with this game, because it's super new at the moment. But, over time, like, your feelings about something solidify. So, well, and this is something too that we always talk about at our mid-year episode, which is actually coming up. It's almost June, which is crazy. But
that's nuts.
I know. But just that, like, we'll pick our top like 5 or 7 or whatever we do this year, things of the year. But then over time, like, they can shift, they can change as we think about it, and get another 6 months just like reflecting on things. Mm-hmm. And this is one that I feel like the more I reflect on it, the more it might go up in my estimation. So don't be surprised to hear about this one when we do our mid-year episode, or maybe even the end of the year episode. We'll see.
That's fantastic. Like, I look forward to hearing about that, because you don't get like this about games very often, where this is a different kind of intensity about it than it was for Fortnite. Like, it feels different. I don't know. This is more of an appreciation of quality than gameplay, almost, where you haven't said anything at all about what it takes to do it, like the actual RTS and survival part of it. You've simply talked about theory. Like, this is game theory stuff almost, where you're just looking at what the developers have done in the experience, which means it's probably a much more lasting experience, lasting memory, lasting impression. That's the word.
It was really, really good. So if any of that sounds like remotely interesting to you guys, I would highly suggest checking it out. At least watch a video or something, but that doesn't do it justice. Like, playing the game is where it's at. I think that's it for this week, ending on a quiet, down, winter, cold note, I guess. But you guys can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback. Our email address is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast. We also have longer discussion threads on our subreddit at reddit.com/r/geek2geekcast.
And make sure that you check out our Slack too. We are on Slack at slack.geek2geekcast.com, and you can get your invite if you go there. And we're also, like we said earlier, part of a podcast network, so head over to geek2geekcast.com to see all of our shows.
I blog at agreenmushroom.com, and you can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter as @Professor Beej, and I blog somewhere, some places, sometimes.
We've been Void and Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
Bye, geekos.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie.
And I'm Chelsea, and we are the hosts of Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea. We are 2 best friends who love pop culture and talking about pretty much whatever we want. Katie!
Yes?
Stop thinking about Zac Efron and tell our future listeners what some of our latest episodes have been about.
Well, we've talked about Zac Efron.
No, get it together, Katie.
Fine. We've talked about fan fiction, classical literature adaptations, favorite TV couples, and so much more. So grab your cup of tea or whatever your drink of choice is and download our podcast today.
Hi, my name is Joe Hogan, and I'm a geek. And if you're currently listening to this, there's a good chance you're a geek too. So check out my podcast, Geektitude. Each week, I talk with somebody about their geek aptitude. Sometimes I talk to people in a geeky profession. Sometimes it's someone doing something really cool with their geekiness. Often it's another geeky podcaster. But it's always someone who wants to share their inner geek. So join me each week as we come together to geek out about all the geeky stuff we love. And remember, this week, keep it geek.